Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about in this diet section of the program is the importance of kefir. So if you've watched my videos on YouTube, you've probably seen me talk about kefir. It's something I find so extremely important in our modern environment, and it's probably the cornerstone of everything I'm going to talk about here, in the sense that if you don't have this in your diet, you are not going to achieve the full benefits of everything we're going to talk about. This is really the stuff that makes you digest everything the way we should digest it. It makes you able to synthesize the vitamins I'm going to talk about, the minerals, everything basically depends on if you have the right microbes in your stomach and in your gut. And this is what kefir offers us. So when we're talking about kefir, we're not really talking about store-bought kefir. They call it kefir, but actually that's kind of a lie. It's kind of a marketing lie. They make it from powdered cultures because that's the way they can make a lot of kefir and sell it. If they had to make it with real grains, as you see here on the pictures, they wouldn't be able to sell it at a large scale, basically. So that's why you have to get these kefir grains and you have to make this stuff at home, and that's really the only way. So when we're talking about kefir, we have two options actually. We have milk kefir and water kefir. And they are a little different in terms of bacteria and all this, but really they're the same, and they are the most potent probiotics we can get our hands on in the modern world. So these are the two that I really want you to focus on. So you've probably heard about probiotics many times before. Many health practitioners talk about probiotics. They talk about probiotic pills. They talk about fermented foods and whatnot. And that's all good, but they're really missing what kefir actually offers, because if they really knew, they would throw all that stuff aside and just get their hands on kefir, because kefir has so much more probiotics and beneficial bacteria and enzymes and yeast and all the stuff your gut needs, and it populates your gut in a way that these probiotic supplements don't do, and yogurt and all this stuff, it just doesn't do what kefir does. It's not even close. So I'm not going to go completely in depth with kefir right now on this slide. I do have many YouTube videos on this that I advise you check out if you want more knowledge on this. But kefir really is one of those things where you don't have to know all this stuff. You just kind of have to drink it and experience the benefits. So that's what I really encourage you to do. You don't really have to look that much into it. Of course, if you want to, I highly encourage it. It's a very interesting thing. Now we are going to get into the big problem that many people have with kefir, and especially milk kefir, which is what I drink mostly. And that is the taste of it. So depending on how long you ferment kefir, it's going to be very sour, and it's not really a pleasant taste for most people. I will say though, the more you drink it, as you get into it, you will actually start liking it and craving that flavor. But some people just don't like the stuff, and we have to work around that. And there are luckily a lot of ways to get around this. So let's go to the next slide, and I'm going to show you some interesting ways of how to make kefir actually taste amazing. So here we have a small little overview on a few things you can do to really improve your taste when it comes to kefir and really start liking it. So first of all, you really want to use good milk, like raw milk. If you have access to that, is amazing. If you don't have access to raw milk, you have to at least get organic. Actually, that's very important. Otherwise, the grains will die and they won't make the proper amount of bacteria and all this. But if you don't have access to raw milk, if you are like me in a country where it's illegal, you can get pasteurized milk at the highest quality you can. Maybe you have some grass-fed milk, organic, and all of this. That's very good. Just get the best milk that you have. Go to a local farm if that's possible. And that's really the best you can do in terms of this. So other things you can do is you can kind of make smoothies out of kefir to really improve the flavor. You can basically make a kefir milkshake, and even kids are going to love that. And it's going to be very nutritious actually, because when we put stuff into the kefir and blend it together, like fruit, like bananas or oranges and even sugar, it's going to start fermenting that sugar and create even more bacteria and vitamins, and everything that you put in there is going to be digested as well. So it's going to fit very well into your stomach, and everything is just going to be absorbed as it should be absorbed. It's a very good way to improve the flavor, but also the nutrition. There are so many things you can add here, so use your imagination and experiment with this stuff. The important thing is that you're just drinking kefir, and really as much kefir as possible, as much as you crave. I drink around 1 liter a day, sometimes I drink more. Maybe you want to drink somewhere around that, maybe a little less, maybe even more. Just drink as much as you can, and notice the effects you experience. You'll actually start feeling happier and relaxed if you drink a lot of kefir. It's very profound when you start out. So to try this stuff out. And another important point, as I have written out here, is to shake the kefir while it's fermenting. So you're going to have the grains in milk in a jar, and you're going to leave that at room temperature. And you want to shake it as often as possible to really mix everything together and make sure that the bacteria always have new milk sugar to eat, basically. So that was just a short little presentation on kefir and the importance of it. As I said, I have all these YouTube videos on it if you want to know more. Basically what I just said, but just much more in depth. So check these videos out if you want to, but as I said earlier, you don't really have to know all this. You just have to drink it and try it out. Get this in your diet and you'll have a good time, basically. So now we're going to get into the specific stuff I want you to be eating. So you need to structure your diet around high quality animal nutrition. This is really going to be the bulk of what your body needs to succeed. And I talk about this a lot also on my YouTube channel, obviously. So I guess we could talk about a few of the foods here. So we have eggs and ground beef. Those are two things that are very common to structure your diet around in this approach. It's what I do a lot. It's cheap and most people have access to this stuff at a reasonable quality. So you can go get pasture raised and organic eggs. And those can be a big part of your diet. And I eat that every day, and a lot of people eat that every day. Eggs are just a very complete food. They have pretty much every single vitamin and mineral. It's not in the perfect ratios, but they do have everything that your body needs, literally. And it's in a bioavailable form. So everything is just going to straight up turn into bioavailable nutrition in your body. And you'll feel that if you haven't eaten this way before and you start eating this way, you'll feel the sort of spike in energy and clarity and all this from getting these bioavailable nutrients. It's not like with a carrot, for example, where you have beta carotene, which has to be turned by the body into vitamin A and all this stuff, and it's very inefficient for pretty much everyone, and we just can't get our nutrients efficiently that way. I'm not saying those foods are necessarily evil and all this, I'm just saying it's not what you need to rely on for nutrition. You need to rely on the foods that I have here. You need to rely on eggs, ground beef. If you have access to good pork, you can make that a big staple as well. Chicken, especially dairy and raw milk, again a very complete food. So this is just sort of some options that I want you to start thinking about, really making a big part of your diet, something that you eat every day. We have beef tallow, we have pork lard, very good fat options. We have beef and chicken and lamb and ground beef and all this, very good for protein and getting your B vitamins. As I said with the kefir, you don't really have to understand everything that is in these foods to experience the benefits. Basically just have to eat them, and I know that sounds kind of stupid, but just listen to your body and try these out and really make them a big part of your diet. So a lot of your calories are going to come from here. I promise you guys, you're going to experience amazing benefits if you haven't done this already. And that's basically the point of this slide. Now we're going to go to the next slide where I'm going to go a bit more in depth on why these things are so important. Okay, so I just talked about the nutrients, the minerals and all this that is in animal nutrition, which is a very important point. But we have to understand the importance of just the basic animal fat and the animal protein. So let's look at protein first of all. What even is protein? Protein is what you're made out of. Your arms, your hair, your organs, everything your body consists of is made of protein. That's why we have to eat protein. And that's why animal nutrition is so efficient for us, because when we get a steak, for example, into our stomach, the body recognizes that steak as being very similar to its own bodily tissue, so it can turn that very efficiently into whatever tissue it needs to make, whether that's skin or hair or muscles, basically. We all know bodybuilders, they eat a lot of protein. Why is that? It's because they work out a lot and they want to increase their mass. They want to increase their bodily tissue, basically, their muscles. And they do that by eating protein. It's actually very simple. And I just have a picture here where you can actually see why animal protein is so efficient and digested so efficiently by us. So if you look at protein from navy beans and from beef muscle, so that would be a steak, for example, or ground beef, you can see they actually have similar amounts of protein listed on the labels. And many people will tell you just eat beans because then you're going to get your protein and all this. You don't need animal foods. But if we look at the digestibility of these things, and at the end, what turns into usable protein, it's more than double what the beans have. So we don't take this into consideration when we tell people to just eat beans. And again, as I just said, you have to think about what happens when your body eats beans. A bean is not very close to your own bodily tissue. So how is your body going to turn that efficiently into bodily tissue? It just can't. So it's not that the beans are completely useless in terms of protein, but it's pretty close actually, because your body just has no realistic way of turning it into what it needs to make. So that's why animal protein is so huge, especially for children and teenagers and people who are still growing. They need a lot of animal protein to keep supporting their body's growth and really turn everything into new tissue to become who they need to be. And if they don't get this, they don't become as tall, they don't become as healthy, they won't look as good, their facial structure will not be proper. Basically what it says here, all protein is not created equal. That is very true. And that is why we want this animal protein on a daily basis, because our cells replace themselves all the time, every day. And we need this every day to support new tissue and to keep being healthy, basically. So that's the animal protein, and that's why that's so important. Just to put it shortly, there's a lot of other stuff we could go into, like amino acids and all this, but let's just save that for another time and just understand how important this protein is for you. Then we're going to look into saturated fat and cholesterol, which I'm sure many of you have heard. We have been told for so long that this is bad for us and it causes heart disease and all these problems, which is basically a lot of terrible science, if I have to be blunt about it. And I have a video about this on my YouTube as well. It's called Humans Need Animal Nutrition. I go in depth on why this was demonized and why we were wrong. And we have since admitted we were wrong, but people still have this sort of ingrained into them that we need to avoid these saturated fats and cholesterols. All the communication channels in your body is supported by saturated fat and cholesterol. And if you don't have these things in your body, you'll run into hormonal imbalance symptoms. So for guys, that could be low testosterone. You are going to start adding more fat to your belly and places where you don't want fat. You're going to have a high lack of energy, low libido. I'm sure you all know about this lack of testosterone, and I'm sure you all know about the benefits of having proper testosterone, which you get from eating increased amounts of saturated fat from stuff like eggs, from dairy, from fatty meats, and stuff like this. And it's the same with cholesterol. So a man with optimal testosterone, he's going to experience sharper mind. He's going to literally be more confident because he has supported his human nature and he's supported his natural hormonal systems, his energy systems with this saturated fat and cholesterol that we just need as a human species. He's going to be more happy. He's going to have increased muscle mass. He's going to have a healthy heart, strong erections, healthy libido, all this stuff, which is just should be a normal part of being a man. And it's the same with women. What happens to them when they don't get enough saturated fat and cholesterol? They're going to run into hormonal imbalance symptoms such as losing their period. They're going to increase fat in places they don't want fat. They're going to be depressed, have anxiety. Everything is controlled by our hormones. And we want to honor that by getting it the saturated fat and cholesterol it needs from high quality animal products. We could go way more in depth on all this. We could go into scientific studies and all this, but I really want you to just trust this and try it out, and you'll experience these things and you'll know that's how it works. You'll know. We don't need to read all these studies, and we don't have to have governments and experts tell us that we shouldn't eat animal fat and we should only eat plants. If you're going to do that, you're going to deprive your body of everything it needs to support its natural systems, and you're going to suffer. It's not the way that humans are supposed to live. And people can do whatever they want for ethical reasons or whatever they think is healthy. I'm just saying this is how the human body works. Try it out and experience it for yourself. So that was a lot about animal nutrition and why it's so important. And I just really want you to understand that. If you have proper animal nutrition, animal fats, animal protein, and you have the kefir, you basically have the fundamentals down. And then is when we can look at these things that I have on this slide, which is stuff we can use to give the body energy. So a lot of people look at berries and fruits and vegetables as things that are supposed to give our body the nutrients it needs, but it's actually the complete opposite. We get our nutrients from the animal products, as I just talked about. That said, plant foods are not useless and all this. That's not at all what I'm getting at. I don't want you to go on a carnivore diet. Actually, I would highly suggest you don't do that. We want balance, and we can give the body the balance it needs by focusing on these animal products for nutrients and energy and hormones and all this stuff. And then we can give it literal energy from carbohydrate sources, such as I have here. And you want clean carbohydrate sources. You don't want this processed stuff, obviously. You want whole foods like potatoes. You want rice and oats. Other stuff you can add to your diet for energy purposes and carbohydrate energy. Bananas and oranges and chocolate is actually very good as well. The minerals that are in chocolate actually complement the minerals in meat very well, so they are very synergistic and work well together. So actually I recommend you try out chocolate. It's a very good thing when you eat a lot of animal protein, which I really want you to do. Stuff like bananas and oranges, good things to add as well for quick energy. I don't want you to go overboard with this stuff, because due to modern factors, these are often filled with a lot of chemicals and not so good stuff due to the way they're grown and because they're made of mostly water. Raw honey is amazing. Get a local honey if you can. Most neighborhoods and things outside of the city have local honey that you can buy. Very good thing to eat, very delicious obviously, and you can mix it together with all this other stuff to make whatever you like. Then we have berries. Again, it's like with the fruit. I don't want you to go overboard with this stuff, but it is a good little option to have, especially if you have local berries in the summer or something. And we have medjool dates here as a picture as well. That's just a particular favorite food of mine. For some reason, these medjool dates just sit particularly well with me. So I really want you to try them out as well, because perhaps it's the same for you. Okay, so that's basically it for the energy purposes, and I just want you to understand the basics of these foods. If you can, I would like you to stick to these foods, but it is possible to see what else you have access to. So another important point about this carbohydrate energy is how it works together with kefir and probiotics. So when we add kefir into our gut and we populate the gut with a lot of beneficial bacteria and enzymes or whatnot, we can actually handle a lot more sugar. And again, sugar is something that has been demonized, but basically what we should demonize is refined sugar and all that crap. But if you get good natural sugar, and actually even potatoes and rice, they turn into sugar in the body. That's how carbohydrates work. And when you add carbohydrates and sugar into your gut that is populated with bacteria from kefir and good probiotics, it's going to feed off that. All the bacteria is going to feed off that. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. Carbohydrate really helps us support the balance that we get from all the animal products and the kefir and all this. It's important to understand the balance of everything. So try these foods out and mix them together with the high quality animal nutrition, and you're going to experience great benefits. So here I just want to shortly focus on some things you can do to add a little more flavor to everything you're going to eat. So a lot of the food I've just shown you is very simple, but there are ways to really make that delicious, and in my opinion, eating should be enjoyable. So use all these things I have here to really add flavor. Use spices, onions, garlic, herbs, and especially salt is also actually very important. Another thing that's been demonized a lot by people saying don't eat salt, it's bad. But we actually need salt in proper amounts to support hormonal function. If you really want salt and you're really craving salt, that's a sign from your body telling you get some salt. If you taste something and it's just way too salty and you don't want it, you've had too much salt. So again, balance is key. And just understand that salt is actually a very good thing for our bodies and for our hormones in general. You can also add things like lemon, mushrooms, fresh fruit and vegetables if you really like that. Some people like a little vegetables on the side of their meat and all this stuff. You can also add vanilla and even sugar to stuff. So for example, kefir. If you look at my day of eating in this program, you'll see I add sugar and vanilla extract. If you have a proper gut microbiome, it's going to use that natural sugar and turn it into bioavailable energy and vitamins and good stuff. So you don't want to go crazy overboard with it, as with anything really. You just want to really keep this balance aspect in mind. We've been told that sugar is the devil and we need to avoid it like the plague, but that is just incorrect. We need to really focus on the quality of the sugar we're eating and then focus on our gut microbiome, and then we shouldn't really be afraid of sugar. So that was just the point of this slide. Now we're going to move on. So now we're going to touch on the quality aspect. So what I mean when I say high quality animal nutrition, and this is by the way also important for plants, but especially for the animal foods, is to get your food as close to natural as possible. So what does that mean? It means at least going organic with your stuff. You can get the USDA organic certification, and then you know that the farmers have to live up to certain requirements. It's not perfect and it's really a marketing ploy a lot, but it's still better than conventional food. And the same with the EU organic certification. Just look for these things and you are at least sure that the animals have lived properly and they've had access to outside areas and grass if it's cows and this stuff. Another very important thing is to avoid soy. Really avoid soy in especially products like eggs and pork. So look for this soy-free label. It's very important. You want grass-fed cows, you want pasture-raised chickens, you want pasture-raised pork and all this. You just want it as high quality and as natural as possible. And I know that this stuff can be quite expensive sometimes, but later we are also going to touch on what you can do if you're really on a budget, and I'm going to show you some techniques. So basically what I'm getting at here is that food is not just food today. All our ancestors had access to was natural, grass-fed food. It was organic, it was pasture-raised. Everything they ate was natural. And that's really what our bodies require. They require this natural nutrition. But then we had the Industrial Revolution and everything sort of got very unnatural. We started feeding our animals very unnatural stuff, and they started getting very toxic and sick. And we started giving them medications for this fact. We started injecting them with antibiotics and all this crap, which just ends up in the food. So basically we need to eat healthy food from healthy animals, and we need to eat the plants that we eat needs to come from healthy soil, which is not nutrient depleted and filled with pesticides and all this. It's just such an important aspect. I have videos on this as well that you can check out. When people tell you just eat eggs, just eat beef, just eat this or just eat that, you have to question the quality. An egg is not just an egg, a steak is not just a steak, a piece of broccoli is not just a broccoli. Everything is a product of the thing it has been grown in. If it's a plant, if it's an animal, it's a product of what it has been eating and how stressed it has been and how it has lived, all this stuff. If we just look at the eggs, for example, on this picture, you can see one is very orange and one is very yellow. So what does this mean? It means that the nutrition in the orange egg is completely different than the one from the more yellow egg. It's actually a complete different food. The yellow egg is going to be filled with a lot of omega-6 because the chickens have probably eaten seeds and seed oils and soy and all this. It's going to have a lot of hormone imbalancing compounds from soy and from living very unnaturally. It's basically a toxin bomb. But if you look at the pasture-raised egg, the reason it's more orange is because it has more carotenoids, which is a fancy way of saying vitamin A. It's basically how the chicken turns carotenoids from the grass and stuff into vitamin A, which has this orange color. It means that this egg is going to have a much higher vitamin A content, and it's also going to have a lot less toxins and all this stuff. We basically have a completely different understanding of food today than our ancestors had. They just saw food as food, and egg is an egg, but that's just not how it is today. And that's what I really want you to understand the importance of, and that's the point of this slide. So this quality aspect is especially important when it comes to food from the sea, because our oceans today are just very, very polluted. And also we have these farm-raised seafoods, like the farm-raised salmon you can see here. It's actually one of the most toxic foods in the world. And that's because they grow them in this close proximity in these circles, as you can see. And they have so many fish in here. And they get sick because they're in such unnatural conditions. They get fed a very toxic diet of very unnatural food that they're just not used to eating. So they start getting very sick and they have to spray them with antibiotics and pesticide, and it's just such a toxic food. But then on the other hand, if you get wild caught salmon from a non-polluted sea, it can be some of the healthiest food of the world. So again, food is not just food. And especially when it comes to seafood, you really have to understand the importance of the source and where it came from. And that's basically what I really wanted to pin down here. So don't just go out and buy all these kinds of seafoods because I say it's healthy. You have to understand where it comes from, and that is especially important when it comes to seafood, because our oceans are just a toxic soup of chemicals and plastics and all this heavy metals and all this stuff is just so important to understand. So I just wanted to really emphasize that, and that was the point of this slide. Okay, so now we're going to get into a very, very important aspect, and something I actually really encourage you to try out, and that is these secret superfoods that the elite won't tell you about, as I've written out here. So that's a little bit of a joke, but really it isn't. If you think about the stereotype we see in movies of rich people and bankers and all these very powerful people, they often eat stuff like caviar, they eat oysters and steak. And in my opinion, they just really understand what the human body needs, and that's maybe part of why they are so successful, but who really knows? So what are these superfoods? Especially the liver and the other organ meats are so nutrient dense. So you have to first off understand that humans, for all of history, or for most of history when we were hunter-gatherers, we actually ate all of the animal, and that's what our body really requires. But nowadays, most humans just eat like the muscle meat from steak or ground beef, but really there's so much key nutrition in these other liver and organ meats. And if you look at the book Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, and look at how some of the indigenous people described sacred foods, as they call it, it was very often liver and these other organ meats, and they just saw something really special in it very intuitively. And when we look at the science today, we can really see why it's so important. So look at liver, for example. Look at all these nutrients. That alone is very, very rare and amazing. But what is so amazing is that these are in extremely high quantities. I'm going to put some numbers on the screen here because I don't really remember them in my head. But vitamin A, for example, the highest amount of vitamin A is what you're going to find in liver. And the second on that list is eggs. And it's so far down, as you will see by the numbers here. And it's the same with things like oysters we have here. A lot of people nowadays, they really understand the importance of zinc. And oysters are by far the highest food we could ever eat when it comes to zinc. And the second on that list is not even close. So you're going to get stuff from these foods that you just can't get from anything else, no matter how much you eat of it. And that's really why they are seen as these sacred foods, and why the indigenous people would feed their pregnant mothers these foods. They really understand how much these foods contain building blocks for creating life, and for it's just such an important thing. And no one really eats these things nowadays, and we've sort of lost this intuitive touch with how important these foods are for our body. Also, we have fish eggs. So fish eggs are extremely high in omega-3, and they also have all these other bioavailable nutrients. Another thing that I really enjoy is Icelandic cod liver. You'll see me eating this in my day of eating as well. It's the same as with normal liver, but also it has this extreme amount of omega-3, and it's just very energy dense as well, very fatty. It has like some crazy amount, like 500 calories per 100 grams, which is just very rare. I don't think I have seen that ever in any other food. If you ever want to try some of this stuff and you don't really find it that appetizing, I suggest you just try to get it down, basically. Take liver here, for example, cut it into small pieces and just swallow it like a pill with some water, and do that until you have eaten maybe 100 grams of liver or something. And you can do that once or twice a week, and you don't have to do more than that. That's how powerful these things are. You don't need that much because there is so much nutrient density in this stuff. I also have bone broth here. Actually, I find that very delicious as well. You can make this yourself. The easiest is to make it with chicken carcass, for example, or chicken bones. But making it with beef bones and stuff like that is also very, very good. It basically has a very concentrated amount of collagen and other minerals and stuff. So that's my point of this slide, is just really understand the sacred nature of these organ meats and these sort of sacred foods. You can really experience a boost if you eat this stuff. If you eat liver, for example, you're going to experience something with your sight just happens because it has so much vitamin A. And vitamin A is required for proper eyesight. It's actually called retinol, is the proper word for vitamin A. And you have something in your eyes called a retina. And that's why it's called a retina. It's because vitamin A goes to your eye, and that's where it works and does everything. So you'll experience much sharper sight. The Egyptians actually used liver. If people had night blindness, they would feed them liver and they would cure their night blindness. It's amazing. And there's all these other stories from nature about liver, which really tells us how important it is and how sacred it is. If a lion or a tiger or something kills a prey, it immediately goes for the liver. It understands that that's where all the nutrient is, and that's what it really wants to get to. It just dives through the stomach, eats the fat as well. If you have a wolf pack, for example, the alpha wolf is the one who gets to eat the liver. So again, there's a lot of stories like this. And as I said, with the kefir and the animal nutrition, you don't have to understand all this jargon, all these vitamins and minerals. These are just things that our human minds sort of have to make up to make us realize how important this is. But really, you just have to try it out and experience the benefits, and I'm sure you will notice great stuff. Actually, another interesting thing you could eat in this regard is testicles, and that's a wild thing for many people, but especially for guys. If they eat testicles, it actually has bioavailable testosterone, so it literally increases your testosterone. Try some of these things out, and ask me if you want some further guidance on some stuff you can eat. This is just something I really want you to prioritize, and that's the point of this slide. So now I've talked about a lot of food that I really do want you to eat. Now I'm going to go into what you really shouldn't eat. So first, very important thing is I want you to cook in good fats. So what do good fats mean? We talked about this a lot earlier, saturated fats. And we have these polyunsaturated fats, which we really want to avoid from seed oils. So really don't ever use seed oils for anything. It's very toxic. I would almost rather you smoke a pack of cigarettes a day than use this stuff. So we're going to talk about this on the next slide, but I just wanted to mention it here as well. You want to cook in butter, you want to cook in coconut oil, and you want to cook in ghee, beef tallow, these animal fats basically. I guess coconut oil is not an animal fat, but it's very rare as a plant fat that it has almost entirely saturated fat, which is what we want. Other food to avoid is especially these nuts and seeds and lentils and legumes and beans. These things have high amounts of anti-nutrients. They also have high amounts of omega-6, especially nuts and nut butters and whatnot. And that's very inflammatory for our bodies. So we want a natural ratio of omega-3 and omega-6 in every food we eat. And these foods literally don't have that. And that's basically the big problem with them. And the other problem is the anti-nutrients, which are going to mess up your gut and give you leaky gut and digestive issues and all this. So really we have to understand what seeds and nuts and beans and all this are and what they're trying to do. They are the reproductive part, you could say, of the plant. They want to survive, they want to go back into the ground so they can grow into new plants and release more seeds, basically. That's what their mission is, and that's what they're trying to do. So if they get inside your body, they're going to release compounds that really makes it impossible for you to digest them. I mean, if you are going to eat peanut butter once a month and it's organic and high quality, you'll probably be fine. But if you eat these things on a daily basis or even a weekly basis, I would say, you're going to have huge issues with your gut and inflammation and all this stuff. So avoid these foods as much as possible, especially the seeds and the beans and legumes. If you do eat them, look into sprouting them or fermenting them or soaking them. We also have spinach and kale down here. And these are just two examples of some leafy greens that have very high amounts of anti-nutrients as well. Especially spinach has a high amount of oxalate, which you really want to avoid. Again, eating a very small amount of spinach is not going to kill you, but I would highly suggest you avoid these things and really avoid eating them in large quantities, specifically these two foods, which I notice a lot of people eat for some reason because they think they're healthy, but really it's not something I find healthy. So now we're going to get into some other stuff that I really want you to avoid like the plague, and that is soy and seed oils. So these, as I say here, are literally evil. They cause so many problems in our bodies, and they are found everywhere today. They are in very high amounts in all restaurant foods. So for example, when you go to a restaurant and you order steak or you order whatever dish you're going to order, they're going to cook it in canola oil or sunflower oil or these highly oxidized seed oils, which is just going to give you high amounts of inflammation, and it's basically very unnatural for your body to eat. If you want to, you can go look up how are seed oils made, and you'll find this video where it shows how they're made, and it's actually quite horrifying. It looks like some sort of chemical plant where they're extracting some sort of toxic byproduct, but then they sell this as food. It's crazy stuff. And you also find it in margarine and these butter replacements. And with soy, what's really terrible about soy is that it has high amounts of these things called phytoestrogens, which basically mimic estrogen in the body. So if you are a guy, for example, and you eat a lot of soy, you will literally start producing female hormones and turn feminized, basically. Also, a lot of the animals, like cows and pigs, especially pigs, are fed high amounts of soy, especially in the US. And when they eat soy, their fat and everything is going to absorb that soy. So when you eat pork fat, for example, which has been from a pig that has been fed soy, you're basically eating soy in a different way. So that's basically why I want this pasture-raised, soy-free animal products, because if not, it's highly likely that they have been eating soy. And it's the same with dairy. It's also very easily transferred into the milk of the cow when they eat soy. So really avoid soy in anything you eat, whether that's animals or literal soy. So tofu and edamame beans and soy milk and tempeh and whatever else they make nowadays, which has soy in it, just avoid it. And seed oils as well, they put it into pretty much everything. So read every label you buy and make sure it doesn't have seed oils, and you'll be good. Okay, so now we get into some very important dietary supplements that you can add into your routine. You will also find a lot of videos on YouTube where I talk about these supplements, and I'm just going to put them on the screen here. So you can check those out for a more in-depth explanation of all this. Here I'm just going to quickly go over what I really want you to take. So first of all, iodine, very important. And when it comes to iodine and everything you're going to supplement actually, is that you want it from a natural whole food source. So we have many synthetic vitamins and minerals that we can buy today at the pharmacy and everywhere basically. But these things are not very natural for our bodies again, and they're not going to turn into what we want them to turn into. But when you get iodine from something like sea kelp, as I have here, you're getting a very bioavailable and natural form of iodine that your body can use. And if you take this every day, you're going to get a natural form of iodine, and your body will slowly fill up with this very important mineral that we just don't get nowadays, and that's why you need to supplement it. It's the same with magnesium. We really need to supplement magnesium today. Magnesium is probably the master mineral if we had to choose one, and it's just so depleted nowadays. It comes from the soil, and our soil is destroyed. I have this video on it that you can check out where I go in depth on it, but just get a good magnesium supplement. What I recommend is this one called magnesium glycinate, which you can get probably online. They don't really sell it at a lot of pharmacies here in Denmark, at least, so you probably have to look online for that. Then we have MSM, which is basically sulfur. Another thing that we used to get a lot of when we lived in more natural conditions as humans. We got it from the rain, and we got it on our food when we ate the food. But also sulfur is something that's very easily destroyed by modern manufacturing methods that we have with our food. So we basically have no sulfur in our food anymore. And we don't really get it from the rain either due to air pollution and all this. So supplementing sulfur is very important. And we also have vitamin C. You can basically view vitamin C not as much as a vitamin, but more as an antioxidant. So nowadays we are under a lot of stress from environmental toxins and EMF and all this stuff, which we're going to talk about in the other courses. And that's why you really want antioxidants to really fight against this stress. That's basically how it works, if we had to put it shortly. And that's why it can be very beneficial to add vitamin C. And again, you want it from a natural source, like this as a roller powder. You don't want what is called ascorbic acid, which is the synthetic form of vitamin C. You want to avoid that and get some natural stuff. Other options are camu powder. And you can obviously also get it from natural fruits like lemons and oranges. And then we have salts. Again, I talked about salt previously, so I won't go in depth. Just very important for hormones, and it's very important that we notice our cravings for salt and work around those. Then I have two supplements here at the bottom, which are very specific ones. They're from this company called Green Pasture, which is really the only one I can recommend, and the only one to my knowledge, which has this very clean cod liver oil. It's called fermented cod liver oil, but basically all cod liver oil is fermented. That's just how they extract it. And I'm sure you've heard about the importance of omega-3, and that's really what we're getting from this cod liver oil. It also has other nutrients like vitamin D, which is very important and in a very natural way. So we're not getting all these synthetic vitamin D supplements, which can be very dangerous, and actually, in my opinion, which I would highly recommend you don't supplement. Instead, go for something like cod liver oil, where you're getting it naturally, and yeah, it's good stuff, and you can try this out. They also sell something called butter oil, which I haven't tried, but it sounds like a very interesting product, and this is something you can think about if you have a hard time getting enough good fats in your diet, or you just want to try it out to increase your fats and really improve your hormones and all this stuff. So these are the supplements that I want to recommend that you try out, especially the first three here, the iodine, magnesium, and sulfur. I really just want you to go ahead and get this. It can make a huge difference. The other stuff is something you can maybe wait a little bit if you don't feel like it's something you have the money for right now, or you want to prioritize other stuff. And also there are a lot of other things you could take, but it's more individual, and we are very different in our requirements. We have different deficiencies and stuff we need. So these are just things everyone can use, and then you can talk to me about the more individual stuff, and I will suggest to you what else you could take to really gain the health that you need. So as I just said, if you ever have questions or concerns about foods or supplements that maybe should be avoided, or maybe something that could be beneficial for you to take, I want you to just ask me, write me on Telegram, and I'll give you a very good answer on my opinion of it and what I really want you to do and what I think could help you out. So don't hesitate to write me, and I'll make sure to give you a very good answer. And that's basically it for this slide. Okay, so now we're going to go into something a little different. The ideas here are going to be less general than what we have talked about previously, and you're going to have to fit this into your individual life and your specific situation. So first of all, I really want to talk about eating according to ancestry, because this is actually a very important point that we just can't ignore. So I have a few pictures here, as you can see, and these are again from the book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. And these are just a few of the indigenous people that Weston Price observed in this book. And as you can see, all of these people had amazing bone structure, they had amazing teeth, and they were just some of the healthiest people that we have ever observed. So I'm going to go over each of these groups, and I want you to kind of think about where you would fit in, and which of these groups that you ancestrally would kind of relate to, if that makes sense. So let's start with the people in the top left corner here. These are indigenous Swiss people living in the Swiss mountains. So these people actually subsisted on nothing but dairy and rye bread. And they had a few other seasonal things here and there, like vegetables and some meat here and there. But really, about 80% of their nutrition, maybe even 90%, came from dairy and rye bread, which is very interesting. And these are, as I just said, some of the healthiest people we have observed. And this is basically what they subsisted of. Then we have the people in the top here, in the middle. These are Native Canadians and Native Americans, I believe. And these people only really had access to food from the land, and especially animals from the land. And I'm talking about big animals here, like bison and animals of that size, which has a lot of fat on them. And that's really what sustained them a lot. And obviously the meat from the animals as well. Besides those people, we have the Inuits from Greenland right here. And these people relied again very much on animal fat and also organs. They basically got most of their nutrients from the organs, and they got a lot of the energy from the fat, and that's it basically. And they lived in a place that was very dark, so they had to get very creative with the things they ate. They ate a lot of seal meat, they ate a lot of rotten stuff, so they ate a lot of rotten meat and a lot of probiotics and beneficial bacteria. Then in the bottom left here we have the Maasai tribe from Africa, and these people, like the people above them, relied heavily on dairy and also meat. So these people are some of the strongest and tallest people ever observed. Then on the bottom right here we have the Gaelics from Scotland and the Irish Islands and whatnot, and these subsisted on only oats and seafood. And again, they had a few seasonal foods here and there, like plants and some meat maybe. But again, 90% of what they ate came from the sea or in the form of oats. So personally, when I look at these people, I know that the Gaelics in the bottom right, eating oats and seafood, is what I really resonate with ancestrally, if you can say it like that. I really, if I go a while without having seafood and having high omega-3 foods, I really don't feel as well, and I don't have as much energy, and I'm just not as vibrant as if I have the seafood basically. So you can sort of think about this, you can sort of think about your ancestors, who were they, what is it likely that they were eating. Are you an Italian guy, so maybe you are more susceptible to eating gluten, which I can't, for example. I just can't eat gluten, it's just impossible for me, and maybe you are the same. Maybe you have African ancestors and they probably relied heavily on meat and dairy, and the same with Native Americans. So just sort of see where you fit in terms of this, and what foods that you are resonating with. So another important point that I really want to emphasize here is that all these people ate the entirety of the animals. So for example, the Gaelics, they ate the cod liver, they ate the entirety of the fish, and the indigenous Native Americans and Native Canadians, they ate the entire animal and all the organs, and the same with the Inuits. And that's something that we have to get back to, and it's something I talked about previously, but I just wanted to mention it here again. So it's very interesting because really we require the same nutrients, and as if you look into it, you will see that these people relied on the same nutrients, but they have different ways of getting to those nutrients. So the Gaelics got it from seafood and cod liver, and they got carbohydrate and gut motility from oats and stuff. And the Swiss people, they got it from dairy and they got it from rye bread. And the Native Americans got it from the fat. They had different ways of getting to this animal nutrition and these nutrients, but what is similar for all these people is they all relied on high quality animal nutrition. And that's what we all need to rely on. But basically this is just to say that you kind of have to also find what type of animal nutrition is suitable for you. And really all animal nutrition is good animal nutrition, but as I just said, I just noticed things like seafood resonate much more with me, whereas something like lamb and beef is less resonating with me, and maybe it's the opposite for someone else. It's not to say that if you resonate with seafood like I do, I still eat a lot of beef, and it's not like this is something you need to think that much about. It's just something that you can keep in mind and sort of experiment with, and sort of notice what you really resonate with. So that was the point of this slide. So now we're going to get into where you actually find these high quality stable animal products that you're going to be consuming on a regular basis. It's a problem that many people have when they start eating this way. Can I go to the supermarket? Do I have to go to local farms and all this? What you really have to do is you have to first of all get out there and look at what you can get. So maybe go to the supermarket first of all. Do you have grass-fed beef there that you can buy at a reasonable price, something you can afford? Do you have good organic products that you can buy and rely on? Or do you have to go to local farms and find raw dairy and beef and eggs and all this? Or do you have good eggs in the supermarket? So you have to get out there and look at what you have access to. And then you can also obviously always contact me and I can help you out with this stuff. But first of all, figure out what you have access to and what can you make staples in your daily diet. So maybe you have a local farm right beside where you live, and you can go there and you can get high quality raw dairy every day or every week or whatever. And if you can rely on that, that's a great food. That could be like 40% of your calories and nutrients coming from there, or even more. And so that's sort of the stuff I want you to think about here. And when you have figured this out, it's all about logistics. So for example, if we take the example of dairy, when am I going to go and get this raw dairy from this farmer? And when am I going to get there again? Is it next week? Is it in a couple of days? And it just gets a lot more stable and freeing and flowing when you know you have these stable foods that you can just go and get. And you don't have to worry about where you're going to find proper nutrition for the next week and all this. You can just sort of go the same places. So for me, for example, I know I can just go to the supermarket here in Denmark and get some very good meat. And I do that pretty much every day or every second day. And I rely heavily on that. And with eggs, it's the same. So just figure this out, and I'm here to help you. So contact me and we'll figure all these logistics out. And you don't have to worry about where you have to find all these high quality animal products, because I promise you they are out there. You just have to find them, and then you have to get the logistics in place, and then you're basically there and you're ready to go. So another very important thing for many people, and something that I've had to deal with a lot as well in my experiences with this, is eating a high quality diet on a budget. So how do we do this? First of all, we have to know where we don't want to slack on quality. So things like seafood and dairy and eggs, these high quality fatty foods, is where you don't want to slack on quality. And why is that? It's because these foods, as we've talked about previously, is where there's a high potential for there to be toxins in it. And toxins, they actually bind to the fat in these animal foods. So when you buy high fat foods, and if they have been treated very badly, or if they've been fed a very toxic diet and all of this, it's going to be transferred directly to the fat. So when you eat this fat, you're basically getting the toxins as well. So this is why you want to prioritize your money. And really, if you have to spend extra, it's going to be on the seafood, it's going to be on the fatty meats, it's going to be on the dairy, and it's going to be on the eggs. So where do you want to save money then, if you have to save money? For example, if you have access to lean meats that are maybe not the highest quality, but they're cheaper, you can go for those, because as I just talked about, the toxins are very often in the fat. So if you eat the lean beef, it's still not ideal. I would still rather you get some high quality grass-fed stuff. But if that's just not possible, then you can at least go for some lean cuts that are cheaper and maybe more conventional, and you're going to be fine. It's much better than buying low quality eggs and dairy and seafood. Also, in some countries, it's very hard to buy organic, and organic produce and stuff is very expensive. Here in Denmark, it's luckily very cheap, and people really value organic stuff, so I'm very lucky in that sense. But some places just aren't like that. So, for example, if you live a place where you can't really get organic, or it's too expensive for you, you can try to seek out these local foods instead. So they might not be organic, but they're at least local. And that often means that it's from farms who really value the ecosystem a lot more, and they use a lot less pesticides. Again, it's not always like this, but often it's like this. So this is what I really want you to prioritize if you want to save money, is the lean meats and it's the non-organic produce, which is still local. Also, when we're talking about eating this way, many people think it's much more expensive than it is. It really isn't that expensive if you look into it. So I buy organic ground beef and I buy eggs, and those things are not the cheapest things in the supermarket, but it's still much cheaper than going out and eating fast food or doing all these things that people do nowadays. People spend much more money on food than they realize. You also eat much less than the average person does. You don't go snacking all the time. You don't buy all these snacking foods. It's very simple here. You're just eating real food. You're eating nutrient-dense foods, and that really satisfies your body, and you don't have to eat all this other stuff and all this processed junk, basically, that people spend money on nowadays. And the last point that I really want you to understand is priorities. So really try to think about how can you prioritize these high quality animal products, even if it's going to cost you a bit of extra money. So do you really need that clothes? Do you really need a new computer, a new Xbox, a new iPhone? Are these really things you're going to need? And it's the same with so much other crap we buy nowadays. We really have to ask ourselves, are these really things that are giving us back what we spend on it? High quality animal nutrition and high quality eggs and all this stuff I talk about, if you spend money on that, it's going to give you way more back than you could ever buy in any clothes or Xbox or whatever. So really try to prioritize spending money on quality food, because it's going to give you back more than you could ever get from a new Xbox or TV or clothes or PlayStation or whatever. You basically can't buy anything, in my opinion, that's going to give you more back than these high quality animal products, for example. It's something that's just so important to your health, and if you don't have your health, then you don't really need all that other stuff anyway. And you don't have these hospital bills either, and you don't have to go to the doctor and all this stuff, which also costs money. So really this is actually going to save you so much money in the long run, and just prioritize it, and you're going to feel great, and you're going to have more money for other stuff. You're going to be more vibrant, you're going to have more energy, which I'm guessing is what you want. So then we're getting into 3 different things here, and it's intuition, enjoyment, and satiety. And these are 3 very important principles. So first of all, in terms of intuition, when you get into this more natural way of eating, your body becomes much better at actually using its natural signals to tell you what you need. So the cravings you get are actually usually a sign of some nutrient or some fat maybe that you're needing. So for example, let's say you're craving eggs. It's highly likely it's the fat in those eggs that your body is screaming at. Could also be a specific nutrient in the egg. Some people, they really crave dark chocolate often. It's very often because they don't have enough copper or magnesium. So you can sort of tell by these cravings what you're actually missing. And when you eat high quality products, your body gets that instant gratification when you reward it with real food. And it really becomes a well-oiled machine that you can just give it what it needs, and it's satisfied. And this is something that gets better the more you eat this way, the better you treat your body, the more you honor your nature and your natural mechanisms. This stuff just gets better, and trust me, this is something that will eventually make you return to the intuitive and symbiotic relationship which we have had with our bodies forever, but which humans really haven't had since the Industrial Revolution, because we just got all this empty food and all this nutrient depleted food and all these fake foods that just messes with these natural signals that our body is trying to give us. So the 3 rules, as I have written out here, is eat real food, and especially fat, because fat is what satiates us. Very often when people are hungry nowadays, it's because they need fat. We don't eat enough fat, and we also have all these products which are low fat, and people think that's healthy, and they're basically depriving themselves of fat, so they're in constant state of hunger. So especially if you're starting out on this, you really want to increase your saturated fat consumption and your animal fats, because that's probably what your body needs the most right now if you have been eating a standard Western diet. When you prioritize this fat after not having done it for a long time, you'll notice that you'll feel more satiated than ever before. You'll have more energy, and you'll basically have this spike of your body telling you, yes, this is what I needed. And that's what a lot of people realize when they eat this way, and that's why I really tell people starting out, just eat a lot of fat, eat a lot of butter, eat a lot of eggs, and these fatty animal foods. So another thing you want to do is number 2 here, honor your body and its signals. So what does that mean? It's much of what we talked about already. Your intuition, your cravings, you want to honor those with real food and really satisfy the craving. It also means that you need to, as it says here in number 3, discover satisfaction. You need to reach this point of satiety that many people don't reach nowadays because they eat so much fake crappy food. And when you give your body real food, you just get this satisfaction. You become satiated. You finally say, oh, I don't need more food. It's enough. And you can go for hours without needing more food. And you eat real food again. And you're satisfied again. So we really want to reach this point of satisfaction after you've eaten. Many people nowadays, they just eat until their stomach is literally full. So their stomach bag is literally full of food and they feel full because their stomach is full. But they aren't. They're just filled up. They're not satiated. They haven't given their body what it needs. They have just put stuff into the stomach. And that's what we want to avoid. We want to become satiated. And we do that by honoring the body and its signals. So I really want to talk about enjoyment as well. You really want to find something that you enjoy and a dietary routine that you get enjoyment out of, basically. So we have this diet culture nowadays where many people tell us we are supposed to eat a lot of greens and eat all this stuff that we don't really like, but we just have to eat it because it's healthy. And that's all good and well. And sometimes you do have to eat some things that you maybe not enjoy. Like I talked about the liver as well. I don't really enjoy that always, but I realize it's very nutrient dense and it's something I can do to honor my body. But for pretty much 90% of the food I eat, I enjoy that food. I look forward to it. I crave it and I make food that I want. So that's just something that you really need to realize as well. You need to enjoy whatever you are eating. You need to look forward to eating your meals, basically. And that really goes hand in hand with satiety and intuition and all this, because when you are honoring your natural signals and when you are honoring your cravings and you are eating what you want and you're eating high quality stuff and really satisfying your body, you are also going to enjoy whatever you are eating. So I really want you to get into this symbiotic relationship where you eat stuff you enjoy and crave and love, basically. Just stay away from the industrial enjoyment, I guess you could call it, and stick to real foods and eat those to whatever craving you have. And you're going to feel great and you're going to be satiated and you're also, most importantly, going to enjoy whatever you're eating. Okay, so another problem that many people have when they get into this way of eating is social situations and what kind of happens to the body when they go back to eating burgers and pizzas and these crappy foods. So I just want to show you some ways that you can sort of deal with these bad meals and these social situations and how you can actually recover from them. Because we all know that these things are going to happen. We are social creatures. Sometimes we have to go out to something and we're going to have to eat what's there. So the first important concept is that consistency really is key. So if you eat well 95% of the time, if you eat well 29 days out of the month, then you have that one day where you eat a cheat meal and it's not going to impact you as much as if you haven't been as consistent, basically. So consistency really is key, and that goes for everything in life, and especially with diet, and especially when you're eating this way. I also have a supplement here that you can use if you really want to expel these toxins which you have gotten from a social situation or a cheat meal you have eaten. And it's supposed to go into the gut and detox whatever bad stuff you just have. It's called Pure Body Zeolite, and it's something I've talked about on YouTube as well, so I advise you check out that video. This is different from the one I usually talk about, which is called Pure Body Extra, which is a nano-sized spray. This is a bigger droplet, which is supposed to target the gut and detox it there. So this is something you can use as well. It's pretty cheap, and yeah, try it out. Then we have kefir at the bottom here. That's something you can actually increase a lot if you know you are going to have a social situation or a cheat meal. So when you populate your gut with a lot of the bacteria from kefir, you are going to really prepare your gut for whatever is going to happen in there. There's going to be microbes in there which are really going to handle the stress of whatever you're going to put in there and going to digest everything as quickly and get rid of it as quickly as possible. So if you have a social situation coming up, or you know you're about to have a bad meal, drink a lot of kefir, and then afterwards you can take this Pure Body Zeolite and you're going to expel a lot of the bad stuff much quicker, and you're going to feel better quickly, and you won't have as much of this hangover type feeling. Another point in these social situations and eating bad meals is just to eat less and eat slowly. So sort of being polite with it, still eating the food, but not really putting a lot of stress in there in the form of whatever food you're eating. So another thing you can do is tell people beforehand about your diet. So if you, for example, are going to your friend's house and they are going to order stuff from a restaurant, or they're going to order pizzas or some other stuff that you really don't want to eat, you can sort of just tell them beforehand that you are on this special diet, and if they're going to order anything, you are not really going to eat it. So best they don't do it, basically. So just being honest with people and telling them that you really are prioritizing what you eat nowadays, and this is sort of something they will usually respect, and that's obviously good. So I want you to use these things, and I want you to think about this consistency aspect. I really think you should be as consistent as possible. If you are consistent with your diet and you have a cheat meal every second month or something, it's not going to be the end of the world. But if you're having a cheat meal every second week, it's going to produce a lot more stress, and you're never really going to reach that peak state that I'm guessing you really want. So this is where enjoyment really plays a big part. If you're enjoying the nutrient-dense things you're eating every day, and if you're getting satiated, you want to be consistent. You want to stay on this diet. You want to keep eating this way because you enjoy it. So that's really important to find something you enjoy, and that's something I'm also here to help you with. So you can always contact me again. So also we really have to think about what cookware we are using. So a lot of people, they disregard this, they don't really think about it. The ones I use are cast iron and carbon steel, and it's what I would recommend you use as well. But you can also use stainless steel stuff if you want that, or if that's the only thing you have access to. But carbon steel and cast iron are really the most natural and non-toxic options. I really enjoy using this carbon steel pan. It's from a company called De Boyer, and I'm pretty sure it's what they use in most high-end restaurants. And cast iron as well, I really enjoy using that, especially in the form of pots, because it holds on to heat very well. So when you're making stews or you're making bone broth or whatever, it really holds on and transfers the heat very well to everything that's in there, and just makes the best possible version of whatever you're creating. Keep these things in mind, and also just really avoid anything that says non-stick. The non-stick spray that they put on pans is something called PFAS chemicals, which I also talked about on my YouTube channel. It's some of the most toxic products we have ever made, and I don't know why they're still allowed to put this on stuff, but just really avoid it. It's also the stuff that's used on Teflon pans, so if they have this Teflon non-stick stuff on them, just stay away from that. It's highly toxic. It's called forever chemicals, so when it gets into your body, it never disappears, and when it gets into nature, it never disappears. So it's not something that you want in there.